has repositioned a Navy destroyer in the region, joining another warship that's already there.
And Israel says it's ready to hit back. CBS 2's Dick Brennan here now with the latest. Dick.
Well, Christina Maurice, Iran is said to be ready to attack after Israel bombed its embassy in Syria, killing 13 people. But it also wants to avoid bringing the U.S. into the fight. And now there are fears of a larger conflict.
Mr. President, are you worried Iran will kill Americans?
President Biden answered, "I'm always concerned about Americans." And he says he expects Iran to attack Israel sooner rather than later.
Your message to Iran in this moment.
Don't. U.S. officials say the size of the planned attack has grown in recent days. It could include more than 100 drones, 150 cruise missiles, and even ballistic missiles used for long-term strikes. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited the troops that are on high alert, while a spokesperson for the IDF says Israel will strike back.
And rather than abandoning your lunacy in the midst of a crushing cost of living crisis brought on by your breathtaking stupidity, you want the citizens of Europe to cough up more fuel for the fire in military assistance. And you have the audacity to say that that is done to help Ukraine. The only people you're helping are the shareholders in the arms companies. And your commitment to ongoing war might be unshakable. Don't
Well, everybody, it's Alex here, and I have backstage Mr. Carl Za, and we're waiting for Scott Ritter to join the program. Let's do a little bit of a sound test here. Everybody, I'm going to bring Carl onto the program. Carl Za, thank you for joining us today. We have Scott Ritter. Carl, unmute your microphone. Tell our guests about what's happening where you are.
Hey, this is Carl Za. I am in Bali, Indonesia. How are you, Alex? I was expecting you to be in my hometown, Chongqing, but you've been running away. You've been running away from Schultz, apparently.
No problem. Carl, tell us about the latest situation until we get Scott on here. What did you think was going to happen in Israel?
Well, actually, I had a lot of questions for Scott, particularly on the current Iran strike on Israel and the possible Israeli reaction. I think this is, for me, it's kind of expected. Israel has been striking on Iranian target for the last 10 years, and Iran has always turned the other cheeks. But this attack on Iranian embassy in Damascus, for people who are not aware, embassy is a sovereign territory. This attacking a country's embassy is equivalent on attacking a country's homeland. And so Iran have to respond. They have to respond. But Iran has done it in a very calculated, very measured way. They targeted Israeli military base. Particularly the airport where they launched the Israeli F-35s to launch the attack on the Iranian embassy in Damascus. So and we have seen the results. We hear all these open source intelligence talking up about Israel's amazing Iron Dome, but we all seen on social media Iranian missiles striking the target. Iran launched about hundreds of drones, and in one night, Israel blew about $1 billion in firing, missile defense, firing its missiles to intercept the Iranian drones, whereas the Iranian probably spent less than 10. Not even of that amount of money. This is asymmetric warfare of the 21st century, and we all know if it's not for the unlimited support of the United States, Israeli war machine will be ground to a halt. And right now we also know that in the recent attack, in the recent Iran strike, the United States and its vassal states actually pitched in to intercept some of these Iranian drones and missiles. So Iran hasn't even launched a tenth of what it's capable of striking Israel. And we already seen Israel is stretching to its limit. It has to ask the big brother, United States, to come in to help out. And this really is really Iran is serving a notice to Israel, like, hey, you won't be able to strike at us with impunity anymore. We will strike. We can strike back, and we will. It's at this point, I think Israel has two options. One, the rational choice is just simply declare victory, like what are a lot of these open source intelligence bro are already doing on Twitter by saying, yes, it's a great success. We intercepted 99% of the incoming Iranian missiles. We have no civilian casualties. So we did great. Awesome. Pat on the shoulder and call it a day. And, do not further escalate. But this is what any rational government would do. But I'm not quite sure Israel will follow down that path, because why would Israel even chose to strike the Iranian embassy in the first place? I mean, this is a clear path to escalation. And we have seen over the past 4 months, what Israel is really trying to do is creating provocation against Hezbollah in Lebanon, against Iran, against Syria. And the plan is to widen the war, so eventually to drag in United States more directly into the conflict. So far, U.S. had just played the arms supplier. They supply weapons and munitions to keep the Israeli genocide going in Gaza, and they try to break through the Yemeni blockade in Red Sea and failing, but that's apparently not enough for Israel. Israel want U.S. to get involved in a Middle East war, which I'm not sure United States is interested at this point, because U.S. is already the empire is already overstretched. U.S. is already involved in a failed proxy war in Ukraine against Russia. It's creating tensions in the Taiwan Strait and South China Sea against China. It's failing to stop Yemeni blockade of the Red Sea. The last thing I think that U.S. Biden administration want to do is to be dragging into a war with Iran. I mean, it's telling at the U.S. reaction to the Iranian strike. Right after the Israel strike on Iranian embassy, Biden came out and warned Iran not to retaliate because U.S. will intervene. And after the Iranian strike, Biden, all he did is stress the quote unquote ironclad commitment of United States to Israel's defense. He didn't say anything about the United States retaliating against Iran like he promised. Yeah, I mean,
no problem. I see that. So, Carl, we got Scott Ritter backstage. I'm going to let you gentlemen share the screen here tonight and introduce yourself to each other. And let's have a conversation about these conflicts that are going on here. Scott has a really interesting analogy of what's been going on in that region. And I think it's important, once again, that we really get the message out to your viewers who are very interested in tonight's topic. I know you were really excited to be on the show here with Scott. It's your first time with Scott on the show, and you guys are going to set the house on fire here together, okay? Well, not literally, but anyway. Okay, we'll bring Scott onto the show. Scott, thank you for joining the program. I'm going to step back here, and you and Carl can introduce yourself to each other, and let's fire away, gentlemen.
Well, hello, Scott.
Hello, Carl.
I'm a big fan, a long-term fan. I remember back in 2003, I was sitting in my Chicago apartment watching you delivering your speech to making appeal to asking more time for the UN weapon inspectors to do their job in Iraq. And then I watched the whole crazy Iraq war unfold. So I've been following you ever since. And I'm really looking forward to this because I have a lot of questions for you in particular about the current goings on in the Middle East. I know you have a lot of expertise in this particular area. I wanted to particularly ask you about, Scott Ritter, everybody. Scott Ritter needs no introduction. But I wanted to ask you in particular, what's your opinion on the Iran strike on Israel, and what do you think will be the possible repercussions? Will Israel just declare, will both sides declare victory and de-escalate, or do you think Israel will take this opportunity to escalate even further in attempt to drag United States into a wider Middle East conflict? I would like to pick your brain on that.
Well, thanks, and thanks for the kind words. I apologize for disrupting your life from 2003 until today, but it is what it is. It'd be better if the world wasn't continually in the process of going insane, and I could focus on topics like golf and gardening that would bore the heck out of everybody, and I'd never have to worry about intruding in their lives. But we are looking at a situation where the world has gone crazy. Let's set up the answer to your question by setting the stage. A couple things. One, Israel has been existing in an environment that's premised on the notion of deterrence supremacy, that Israel alone gets to call the shots in the Middle East, that Israel, because of its unique status as the home of God's chosen people, with its biblical connotations, and in the history of World War II, the Holocaust, and the persecution of Jews, Israel has taken all this, perverted, I believe, the memory of those who died in the Holocaust, because you can't justify one genocide, which is the ongoing genocide carried out by Israel against the Palestinian people, by citing an earlier genocide, the genocide carried out by Nazi Germany against Jews. So, Israel has said that it will not tolerate any attack on its soil, and that anybody who dares attack Israel, whether it's Israeli soil or Israeli consulates, by the way, Israeli embassies, Israeli diplomats abroad, they will pay an extraordinarily heavy price. I heard one Israeli speak of tenfold damage, meaning that the price somebody pays for attacking Israel will be tenfold. And I'll give you an example. Saddam Hussein fired 49 ballistic missiles against Israel during Operation Desert Storm from January 1991 until the end of February of 1991. From that, Israel embarked on a policy of assassinating Saddam Hussein. A lot of people don't remember 1992, 1993, when the Israeli government basically made it their policy of assassinating Saddam Hussein. They would have carried it out had their special forces not had a horrible accident in their training ground, where it was supposed to be a rehearsal using inert weapons, but one of their elite commandos made a mistake and had a live missile, and they fired against the vehicle that was supposed to be simulating carrying Saddam, and killed a whole bunch of Israeli commandos. And the assassination attempt went public, and so they had to pull the plug on the assassination attempt. And then Israel spent the next several years seeking to contain Saddam, contain Iraq, and then ultimately bought into George W. Bush's invasion of Iraq for the purpose of getting rid of Saddam Hussein. And the revenge exacted against Saddam Hussein was a clear signal. Anybody who reaches out and does damage or does harm to Israel will suffer this fate. And yet Israel also operates on a double standard that says that as threats emerge in the region that Israel determines needs to be resolved violently, that Israel has the right to reach out and touch people abroad. And we've seen Israel bomb Lebanon, bomb Syria, bomb Iraq, carry out assassinations on Israeli soil. And their premise is, we get to do it, but you don't. And Iran had, for whatever reason, and I think the answer is that when Iran looks at the strategic balance of their interests, that Iran determined that the the strikes that Israel carried out against Iran were of a lesser degree than the consequences Iran would pay for retaliating against Israel. In this case, Israeli deterrence supremacy won out. Iran took a look at, the situation and said, it's not in our interest to strike Israel directly, that we will use proxy conflict, we will use hybrid conflict. And indeed, Iran was, and successfully so. One only has to take a look at the axis of resistance performance in post-October 7th battle space to see that Iran and the axis of resistance, Hamas, are winning against their strategic conflict with Israel. And so Iran's posture wasn't a posture of weakness, but actually a posture of maturity, a posture of patience, a posture that was imbued with strategic vision, not knee-jerk overreaction, which is sort of the modus operandi of the weak and those who lack confidence in their overall strategic posture, Israel. But to show you that Iran does have strategic, it has strategic deterrent philosophy, just take a look at Iran versus the United States. When the United States struck Qasem Soleimani, assassinated him in Baghdad in 2020, Iran retaliated by striking Al-Assad Air Base with, I believe 10 ballistic missiles. These missiles were precision guided. They hit exactly what they wanted to hit. They had horrific damage, but Iran telegraphed its punch so that the United States had their forces either evacuated or in bunkers. Hundreds of Americans suffered, what we call traumatic brain injuries, but no Americans died. But as a result of that, Iran put a marker on the table that said this won't be allowed. And look at what the United States has done since then. When Iran shot down a Global Hawk drone worth many millions of dollars, Donald Trump was threatening to retaliate by striking the Iranian air defense sites in Iran. And he was told by the Pentagon that the Iranian retaliation would be so extensive and the damage done would be so immense that, the United States could suffer, A, economic collapse, and B, it would take us forever to accrue the military power necessary to respond to the Iranian retaliation. So it's in our interest not to strike. That's Iranian deterrence, posture, showing that it has, in certain cases, deterrence superiority, if not supremacy. But they hadn't put that with Israel. Israel was still striking targets in Syria, in Iraq, in Lebanon. And on April 1st, Israel struck a target that it deemed must be struck from its point of view. A meeting of Iranian Al-Quds forces, senior commanders, at the consulate in Damascus, Syria. Now, let's just take a step back, because there's people say, that's not really a consulate, Scott. That's a military headquarters. It's a legitimate military strike. I would just respond by saying that that's probably the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Every embassy that the United States runs in major countries incorporates a significant CIA presence. There's a CIA station that carries out covert actions against the nation that they're in, even if they're friends. Ask the Germans, how was it for Angela Merkel to have her phone calls intercepted by the United States, their friend? We also have a defense attaché office, and not only does the attaché office provide the conduit for providing military equipment, but it also serves as a headquarters in which planning can be done. So, for instance, a lot of the planning being done right now in support of what the United States and NATO is doing in Ukraine is done in U.S. diplomatic facilities in Europe by defense personnel, both those who are permanently stationed there and those who are temporarily reassigned. So if we use the standard that Israel used to strike the consulate, that it was providing a safe haven, a diplomatically protected safe haven for Iranian military personnel to plan activities that could be seen as detrimental to Israel, then understand that every diplomatic facility run by the United States, run by Europe, run by almost every nation falls in the same category and can be bombed. This is why the international community came together and passed agreements and treaties and such that established the notion of diplomatic invulnerability, that you can't strike these buildings, that it's, it is inherently destabilizing. But Israel struck anyways, killed very senior officers of the Iranian Al-Quds forces. And now Iran had a problem. If Israel was allowed to get away with this, then Iran wouldn't be able to do anything. Everywhere they turned, Israel could reach out and strike. And eventually, Israel would become more and more bold. And it could lead to the Israelis deciding to strike Iran directly using F-35 fighters, missiles, etc. And we also have to keep in mind that Iran has been trying to get the United States for over 30 years now to join it in a military adventure against Iran to destroy Iran's nuclear infrastructure, to destroy Iran's ballistic missile production capability, to carry out a regime change type conflict against Iran. That's been Israel's goal. Israel understands that it cannot fight Iran on its own, that it has no capacity to sustain meaningful military power projection into Iran, that it needs the United States. It must have the United States. So now we have a situation where Iran has to respond. But what is Iran trying to accomplish by attacking Israel? Are they trying to defeat Israel? Iran's already defeating Israel. I think we need to understand that what the axis of resistance is doing in terms of supporting Hamas in Gaza is a victory. The Israelis themselves, the day before the Iranian retaliation, Haaretz, a major Israeli newspaper, ran a front page story and said, "We've lost this war. It's done, finished. We can't win it. We're losing." And the Israelis recognize this. And so Iran's already winning. They don't need to attack Israel to win. And they don't want to do something such as an over response that empowers Israel to carry out a strike against Iran that the United States would feel compelled to join in on, thereby creating the conditions for a general war between Iran and the United States. So the response needs to be measured, but it also has to make sure that everybody involved understands that Iran will never again tolerate this. Now, deterrence only works if the people being deterred believe. I mean, if I told you that my deterrence is to walk up to you and run a feather lightly across your face, are you deterred? No. But if I told you, you do that, I'm going to pound your face into pulp, bloody pulp, leave you bleeding on the ground, spitting out your teeth. You'd say, well, that I don't want to happen. Therefore, I'm not going to do this. But now if I pound your face into a bloody pulp so you're spitting out teeth, I might go to prison. I might pay a consequence for that. And I'm saying, is it worth it? Maybe if I just went up to you and put my fist right in your face and tapped your nose just enough to let you know that I can make contact with your face anytime I want. And when I do make contact seriously, you're going down. That would be deterrence. You'd say, well, I couldn't stop that fist from touching my nose. What if he had hit me hard? I don't want that to happen. That's what Iran did. Iran carried out an action that wasn't designed to defeat Israel or to do harm to Israel. It was to let Israel know that Iran can reach out and touch Israel anywhere, anytime, with any amount of power, and there's nothing Israel can do to stop it. The proof in the pudding, Nevatim airfield, the most heavily protected place on earth when it comes to anti-ballistic missile capability, specifically tuned to deal with Iranian medium-range missiles, the very missiles Iran was firing into Israel. They had a giant ANTPY-2 X-band radar. Now, this is important for the Chinese audience here because this X-band radar is tied to the THAAD missile defense system that we throw into Guam and we throw into South Korea and Japan. We put it everywhere because we say it's part of our ballistic missile defense capabilities. And we're trying to tell the Chinese and others, North Koreans, we got your number. Don't even think about attacking us because we got this missile capability, this defense, this radar that will detect you attached to these missiles that will shoot you down. We're deterring you just simply by deploying this stuff. We had that in Israel. It's been in Israel for some time, and it's been linked into Israel's integrated anti-ballistic missile defense system, the Arrow 2, the Arrow 3, the Iron Dome, the improved Patriots, David's Sling, all of these capabilities that Israel, together with billions of American taxpayer dollars, in concert with the American Ballistic Missile Defense Organization, has been building for one purpose and one purpose only, to shoot down Iranian missiles. That's all they're trained to do. That's all they're supposed to do. And Nevatim is where this radar is. It's where the F-35Is are based. It's where a lot of stuff goes on. So they're protecting it. And that umbrella extends out over the Negev region to include Dimona, Israel's nuclear facility where their nuclear weapons are produced to include Ramon Air Base, other air bases. It's saying you can't touch the Negev, that this is our safe haven, that from here we will launch the strikes that do harm to you. And the United States and Israel were confident that they had the best capabilities in the world. On the 14th, Iran launched an attack. Let's forget about the drones and the cruise missiles. Those were basically the alarm bells purposely set off so that Israel could put people into bunkers, get the kids out of the way. Iran wasn't seeking to strike civilian targets, but you never know in conflicts like this. If a missile hits something, it deviates off. You don't want a bunch of kids in a classroom getting blown up. So Iran is saying, get everybody out of the way. Here we come. We're coming. We're coming. Get what I'm saying? We are coming. So all those missile defense guys are going, all right, we get to do our thing. And they enhance it by putting airplanes out there to shoot down the drones. They bring in ships ashore that connect with, here's an important part too, again, for the Chinese audience, because now you know, just so you know what happened here, the American Aegis class destroyers came in and became interconnected with the ballistic missile defense architecture. They are now one with it. It's not architecture plus ships. They have joined together. That's how we do things. That's how we'll do it against you if we ever have to fight you. We'll bring our ships in, they'll tie in, and we're saying, we got your number. You can't beat us. So they're all ready. The Iranians came in with at least 3 different kinds of ballistic missiles. Now, they threw a bunch of other ballistic missiles out there that were designed to be detected and to be shot down. They'll send those out first. Now, what's important here is that the Iranians are collecting intelligence as this goes on. They fire these older missiles out there, and they go, okay, detection time, reaction time. Very important stuff to factor in here. Detection time, reaction time. How many targets generate how much response? So if I send 5 missiles, what responds? What's coming after us? Which missiles? How do they layer their defenses? All of this is being collected by the Iranians, who are observing and incorporating all this data. So they fire these things out, and sure, these things are getting knocked down. They're not the best. These are older ballistic missile trajectory type weapons, and they're getting hit, knocked out of the sky. But that's okay, because now Israel is looking at the nodes in Israel where this stuff is being fired, and they redirect their missiles and they launch. The missiles they launched against these targets were, there were basically 3 targets that Israel was, 3 primary targets Israel was interested in hitting, and then several secondary targets. They hit them all. Number 1 was a secret Israeli facility in Golan. The Israelis aren't talking about it because I think it was pretty much handled. But this is a facility, an intelligence gathering facility that allows data to be collected in Damascus. And this intelligence was fed to the F-35Is that flew out of Nevatim and Ramon Air Base, or the I think it was F-16s that flew in support of this attack. And so all 3 of these bases were related to, and this is important, related to the attack against the consulate. Iran didn't carry out an indiscriminate attack against things. They hit 3 targets, major targets, that were involved in striking the consulate. The one target in Golan Heights was hit very hard. Why? Because even though Israel has annexed the Golan Heights, it's not really Israel proper. So it's basically saying, this is fair game. It's not part of Israel. We're taking it out. We're going to do damage here deliberately. But the other 2, Nevatim and Ramon, they're in Israel. Iran has to come in with that delicate touch to the nose. They can't punch the face in. So Iran sends missiles in. Let's just cut to the chase, first of all. At least 5 Iranian missiles hit Nevatim airfield, the most heavily protected space on Earth, designed to prevent any missiles hitting. 5 hit. The Iranians, I believe, announced they launched 7 missiles against Nevatim. So they lost 2. Now, did these 2 malfunction? Did these 2 get shot down? We don't know. My guess, probably shot down, because like a boxing match, even if you're an inferior boxer and you're going to lose the fight, you'll lounge around. You'll get a punch every once in a while. 2 missiles were shot down, but other missiles hit. And how did they hit? They hit by incorporating technologies that were known. I mean, it's not like they're unknown, but the West didn't take seriously, such as a separating maneuvering warhead. you see, the way the X-band radar is designed, it's going to detect this object that's coming in on a predictable ballistic missile trajectory. It's going to be a warhead attached to a main body, and the radar is pinging off that, and then at some point in time, the warhead separates. And now you create two different algorithmic calculations that are taking place within the radar signal. It's got a single target, it's become two. One is a large mass that now is starting to spin and change its trajectory dynamics. So the radars have to adapt to that and send signals out. So already, just by separating your warhead, you've complicated the picture. And so now it's going crazy. They're getting new firing things, prioritization. What had they done in terms of bias? And so they're going to look at that large thing and they're going to fire at it. And these were hit. You can tell. If you look throughout Israel, you see the liquid fueled engines separated from the body. That means that a missile hit it, blew the engine out of it, and that fell to the ground. Tragically, one of those separated engines landed in the desert, and a 7-year-old Israeli Bedouin girl was severely injured. She's in the hospital right now. This is a tragedy. But the point is, a lot of the targets that Israel's hitting are these derelict, missile bodies that have no military value. They've separated the warhead, but now the warhead's coming in. So now the radar has to realign on the warhead and redirect and reprioritize. So things are happening. Remember, I'm just talking about one missile right now. One missile. Already I've created chaos by having a warhead separate. So now the warhead comes in, and now the Israelis and the Americans, they're all doing it. And I'm talking the whole world's focused. You got a whole bunch of keyboard warriors sitting there going, holy cow, what's happening? And the warhead comes in. So they start doing a firing solution on the warhead. Two kinds of warheads came into it, or three kinds, but I'll talk about one. One was a warhead that had the ability to fire decoys. So as it comes in, and as the radars are starting to do the calculation, remember the Iranians, they're looking at reaction time. At what point in time does the anti-ballistic missile system engage? And so what you want to do right before that, right when the whole system going fire solution, we got it. You've seen it in the movies, it's fake, but like in Top Gun Maverick, and he got that little red square. You're like, oh, don't put the red square on the airplane. Don't do it. All of a sudden, deet, 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 deet. Missile fires up, bam. Oh God, you got me. So you have that equivalent of there, where the Israelis are going, oh, we're putting that red square on the, oh no. But right before they fire it, the thing pops out all these decoys, and the whole radar system goes, boom. We don't know what the hell just happened. Instead of one, we've got 12. Which one is it? Because they're all maneuvering funny like, and they're shooting down at different velocities, and the whole system's going, God, we can't handle this. We can't handle it. And the real missile warhead goes, thank you very much. Boom, right on target. Couldn't be shot down. Can't be shot down. That's one. The other one is they just fired it and they released a maneuvering warhead. So from the start, it comes out and it just starts moving around. And the whole radar's going, oh, damn, this thing's moving. They're trying to catch on it. But right when they get the firing solution, it fires a rocket motor in the back and zooms in. But not only that, because it's maneuvered, it's gotten off a little bit on the track. So as it's zooming on the target, and you see the video of this, where the warhead comes in, and then it goes up, adjusts, goes up again, and hits the target. Terminal guidance hits the target. And it can't be stopped. And then finally, they brought in the large missile that doesn't have maneuvering and all that stuff. But once they clear out the whole battle space, look at the two big holes that were in the runway. That was done by a third kind of missile that just came in and said, yeah, we're the big boy. Boom, boom, goodbye. Now, imagine if after clearing out all the air defense, confusing the living crap out of all the air defense, the Israelis or the Iranians, instead of sending in 2 boomers, sent in 100 boomers. And each one was aimed at a warehouse building, a barracks building, a communications building, a hardened aircraft bunker, where the airplanes are stored, taking those out. And now you have 100 big craters in Nevatim. The face is destroyed. That's the future of Nevatim if the Israelis want to continue this game. But the other thing that happened is, as the missile defenses are being shot, the Iranians are collecting that data too. And they're sending stuff in. And you see these 2 warheads I described, the one with the shotgun effect and the other one with the maneuvering effect. Take a look. They have you see on the video where the Iron Dome is firing off their rockets up there. And then, wham, the guy comes in, fires his little shotgun shell, and they fire off more. Look at where the Iron Dome was firing, and look where the warhead hit. The Israelis gave away the node, so they came in and went boom. Now imagine if the Iranians launch multiple waves of rockets, as they will in the future, and the first wave, in addition to blowing things up, starts giving away the targets, and they go, "Oh, here we are. Hi, we're Iron Dome," and the Iranians go, "We don't care about Iron Dome." Well, wait a minute, over here, I'm Thad. I care about Thad. Bam! There goes Thad. I'm David Sling. Goodbye, David Sling. I'm an improved patriot. До свидания, mama. Arrow 1, arrow 2, you're done. And that's what would happen. They come wave after wave and just eliminate all this. And this is what happens. You see, the Iranians led with drones. And the purpose of the drones was to give advance warning. This was not a coordinated attack in terms of a classic time on target. See, a classic time on target has everything arriving at once. But now what the Iranians will look at what the Russians have done. The Russians have been masterful at going into Ukraine and taking out the Ukrainian air defense over time. Now the drones that used to go in to set off Ukrainian air defense so that more precision missiles could take them out, since there's no more air defense, the drones are just coming in blanketing everything, and it's wide open. Now imagine you're Israel and you've just had all your air defense killed by the Iranians. Because remember, they have the capacity to do that now. They've proven it. Now the drones come in. Now people say, well, they'll be shot down by airplanes. Well, how much fuel is in an airplane? I'll give you a pro hint. It's not indefinite. Eventually, airplanes have to land. But how do you land in an airfield that's been taken out? You can't. You go to your reserve airfield, but that's been taken out too. So now what happens is the Israeli aircraft have to flee to Cyprus, to Jordan, to some place to be recovered because they can't land in Israel. And while that's happening, they're not up in the air shooting anything down. And so now the drones come in. And it won't be 100. It won't be 300. It'll be 1,000. And the drones will come in and there will be nothing left to shoot them down. And they will take out every single target in Israel. And this is just day one, ladies and gentlemen. Then day two will come around and Iran will do it all over again. But this time, there's no air defense system. So that's what happened. Now, Iran didn't do this, but they can do it, and Israel knows it in America. Israel had its nose touched. Bam. And they're looking back and they're going, damn, we couldn't stop those missiles. And there was only 7 fired. We shot 2 down, but 5 came in. Guys, can we, if they sent 1,000 missiles at us, what would we get? We'd shoot down 20? So you're telling me that 980 missiles are going to hit Israel. We can't win that, can we? No. So maybe we don't want to bomb Iran. And here's the other thing. Even if Israel's crazy enough to talk about it, like Netanyahu's, in a domestic political crisis right now. So to save his political career, he might want to bomb, Iran, retaliate. The United States has put him in the hug. You see, it's a hug that looks like friendship. Hi, Israel, we're here for you. Let me introduce you to my X-band radar that controls everything. I'm hugging you, telling you I love you. But now Israel says, but we want to attack Iran. I'm not letting go of my hug. You see, it's become constraining. It's not here to tell you I love you. It's here to tell you I'm controlling you. And that if you want to go after Iran, you can't use the X-band radar to defend yourself anymore. You can't use any of the stuff we gave you to do anything anymore. And we're not going to be there with you. How are you going to refuel your airplanes? Who's going to get diplomatic clearance for you to fly over Saudi Arabia, Turkey? No, you're going to have to go a very predictable route over Jordan, through Iraq, and then you're going to come in on a predictable avenue of approach because it's dictated by the reality of your fuel availability because we haven't refueled you. So you're going to come in with very limited time, which means that instead of maneuvering, you got to go direct route. And the Iranians have stacked their air defense and all your airplanes are going to be shot down because you suck as a tiny little country that doesn't know how to fight a war of this scope and scale without American assistance. And that's the reality of it. Israel's a nation that can't even handle Hamas and Gaza. And now they want to talk about taking on Iran and they want to do it. They can only do it if America helps them. The F-35 is a nice airframe, but it has extreme limitations. And one is fuel, the other is payload. I don't care how stealthy you are. The stealth doesn't work when you have to go in with a direct line of approach through air defenses that are looking for you. You may get to the target, but you ain't coming home. And Israel will lose almost all of its F-35 strike fighters trying to strike Iran in that way. They can only do it if America provides refueling, if America provides electronic warfare, if America provides fighter escorts, if America provides diversions, if we incorporate suppression of enemy air defense, if we come in and help remove Iranian air defense, suppress it so that the Israeli fighters can come in, having refueled now, can maneuver, take the better approaches, drop their ordnance, and get out. That could work once or twice. But Israel on its own, they can't do it. They can't do it. So Iran has established deterrence supremacy. That's the reality. Israel now looking at the fact that if Israel reaches out and touches Iran, Iran will hit Israel tenfold, doing far more damage to Israel than Israel would do to Iran.
Let me jump in there for a second here. Two things that I've seen happen in the last couple of days here. One, Iran strikes Israel, and the other one, I've never heard Carl Zaw so quiet in a live stream in my life. This is awesome. So we're sitting back, and we are, Scott, you are absolutely on fire tonight. This is exactly what the audience needs. We need to get up to speed with what's going on in that region. Carl, let's get on to some more questions. Maybe you want to add to some commentary, and I'll let you gentlemen share the screen, okay?
First of all, thank you, Scott, for that university level lecture. I'm sure everyone here appreciate and learn a ton. But I do have a question. I want to pose a lens back a little bit. What is Israel's end game? I mean, why is Israel trying to create the provocation in the first place against Iran, against Hezbollah? I mean, how does expanding the scope of the conflict help the long-term existence of Israel? Because for outsider like me looking in, it looks like Israel is on a suicidal path. What they're doing is not creating, far from creating like long-term stability. They're just trying to destabilize the whole region and blow up the Middle East, and they're trying to drag U.S. into it. But what is Israel's end game? I mean, am I just to assume Netanyahu is completely insane? I mean, is he just like don't care anymore? He just want to do whatever it takes to save his political ass, so he's willing to blow up the world for it? I mean, how? I maybe just take a stab, speculate. I'm just trying to understand what led us to this point.
We don't have to speculate. We know what their game is. Look, Benjamin Netanyahu comes from the political wing of Israel that doesn't believe in a Palestinian state, whether it's part of a two-state solution or a one-state solution. They don't believe in this at all. And Benjamin Netanyahu has made it his goal and objective to destroy the foundation of the potential of peace that had been built by Yitzhak Rabin in the Oslo Accords, Oslo I, Oslo II. As imperfect as they were heading Israel down a path that could have resulted in a viable Palestinian state in one shape or other. And Netanyahu and the Likud party said, no, we're not going to do that. Now, as Israel evolves over the years, understand this, that when Yitzhak Rabin was prime minister in the 1990s, the political demographics of Israel were far different than what they are today. Likud was a powerful party, but so was Labor. And Israel was populated by people that I would say were second and third generation removed from the Sabra, or the original settlers who created Israel. The original settlers were fanatics. We know this. We listened to Ben Gurion. We listened to, the other fathers of Israel, and we understand the extraordinary racism that existed as they talked about, eliminating Palestine, driving the Palestinians from their homes. They understood the consequences. Ben Gurion said, if I were Palestinian, I'd hate Israel for what Israel has done to them, but we have to do this to take the land. But there are consequences for your actions. And as the old generation died out, the next generation came in and said, but we don't want to live in an Israel that's defined by perpetual conflict. And these are the Israelis that I fell in love with, to be honest with. I went to Israel extensively from 1994 to 1998, worked as Israeli intelligence on the Iraq problem. But in all my travels to Israel, I got to know these people very well. Tragically, I was in Israel when Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated. And I saw, the harm, the damage that had been done. Now, Benjamin Netanyahu didn't pull the trigger, but Benjamin Netanyahu created the political environment by being in bed with radical Talmudic rabbis who gave an order that condemned Yitzhak Rabin as a let me just fix the focus on that camera there. Condemned Yitzhak Rabin as I think they call him a follower, or there's some radical law based upon Talmudic scripture that basically marked Rabin for death. And the assassin, who's a radical right-wing Israeli Orthodox, said, the rabbis have told me to kill this man as a threat to Israel, so they killed him. So we know that Israel was already imbued with this radical thing. And the irony was when I first started working in Israel in 1994, Saddam Hussein in Iraq was deemed to be the #1 threat against Israel. But because of the level of our cooperation, I was able to convince the Israelis that that Iraq could be disarmed, that Saddam would allow Iraq to be disarmed, and that Israel and Iraq could live together in some sort of pragmatic driven peace. And they bought into it. And by 1998, when I was eventually evicted by the United States because of the success of our work, the Israelis, basically, Iraq had dropped to, I think, number 6 or number 8 on their list. Number 1 on the list, though, surprised me. It was radical Orthodox Jews, was deemed to be, in 1998, the #1 threat to Israeli security, largely because of what happened to Yitzhak Rabin in 1996. But also, keep in mind that or 1995, I think he was assassinated, that Israel was receiving hundreds of thousands of new immigrants from the former Soviet Union, from Russia, from Ukraine. And these immigrants came in, and you see the mindset that empowered Rabin was a mindset that said, we have to find a way to live in peace with the Palestinians. It's in our interest. When I was in Israel from 1994, 1996, every time I went to Israel, something horrible happened. And generally it was a Hamas-driven terrorist action. I mean, I had a restaurant we used to go to get blown up the day after I ate there. I went to a mall that was blown up a day after I shopped there. There was a discotheque, I think they call it the Aquarium or something of that nature. It was blown up with multiple casualties right next to the hotel that I stayed in. And these attacks were taking place all over. But the Israelis that I dealt with, I remember the first time this happened, a bus was blown up in Dizengoff. And I went to work the next day. I was driven to this Israeli military facility where we were doing the cooperation. And the Israelis there, in the Israeli intelligence service, a lot of their administrative staff are females, and they were crying their eyes out. And I said, look, we can take a day off. I mean, we can take as much time as you off. I don't want to be here. You're clear. And they said, no, we have to do this because this is the only path to peace. We have to engage. We have to work. We have to, pick ourselves up. We can't allow terrorists to corrupt us. That they have done an evil, but we need to work for peace. And for them, peace was learning how to peacefully coexist with their neighbors. But these people were people who were born in an Israel that understood that maybe the mindset of the founding fathers wasn't a healthy mindset, that maybe Nakba, forceful eviction of Palestinians, wasn't the right policy, that maybe a Palestinian state where the Palestinian people could live with dignity next to the Israelis in peace and prosperity, that might be the direction to go. But now and remember, Likud didn't want this. Netanyahu's party didn't want that. This is Yitzhak Rabin, Shimon Peres, and Labor saying this is what we want. But now you have these immigrants coming in, and they don't have the history of the native-born Israelis. They come in, and all they say is, and first of all, they're very racist, and so they criticize Palestinians as brown, as subhuman, and they say, no, we're all about Israel for Jews. We're all about this Jewish homeland. Let's kick these guys out, Muslims and Christians alike. Let's do this. And Likud started to make common cause with these radical right-wing parties that were absorbing these immigrants. And you see the political demographics of Israel change over time. I will tell you today that the Israel that exists today is not the Israel that I fell in love with back in the 1990s. I know there's people out there saying you should never have fallen in love with Israel. I'm sorry. I'm a humanist. Somebody who looks at people for their potential. And I saw in Israel the potential to make changes. That Israel no longer exists. It died out with Yitzhak Rabin. Benjamin Netanyahu fundamentally corrupted Israel and transformed it into this evil political Zionist entity that's all about slaughtering the Palestinian people and denying them their right for statehood. So that's what Israel has become. So when you have an Israel with this mindset, look at the man behind it, Benjamin Netanyahu. This is about existential survival. Both as a nation, he's defined the defeat of the Palestinians as an existential problem, but it's also for his political survival. He has made a deal with the devil in terms of the coalition, the governing coalition, where he has to do certain things to do it. But here's the irony of it all. On October 6th of last year, Netanyahu was winning. People keep going, well, he's insane, he's suicidal. No, it's not insanity. It's cruel, it's criminal, but it's not insanity. Look what was happening. Israel, through the Abrams Accord, negotiated with the Trump administration, had eliminated any possibility of there being a Palestinian state, and the Arab world bought into it. Now, they didn't buy into it by saying, we support this. What they said is, we don't support the Abrams Accord in terms of the West Bank settlements, and we'll have to talk about that. But part of the Abrams Accords were to normalize relations between Israel and the Gulf Arab states to create a broader framework of coexistence that was built not upon fighting over Palestinian issues, but on economic co-prosperity. Joe Biden went to India for the G20 summit last summer, and he stood up in front of the world and said, here's my big plan. We are going to create the India-Middle East Economic Corridor. And again, for the Chinese audience out there, they were creating it to attack you, to block your Belts and Roads initiative. This was the big American counter strategy. Just a little deviation here. The last time I checked, though, the ports that they were going to come in were ports that had been built up by the Chinese as parts of the Belt and Roads Initiative. The trains they were going to rely on to make the connectivity were built by the Chinese as parts of the Belt and Roads Initiative. Haifa harbor in Israel, that was going to be the cornerstone of the Israeli environment, that was built by the Chinese, and they were going to a harbor in Greece that was built by the Chinese. So it seemed to me that this grand scheme was actually sort of dovetailing on the success of the Belt and Roads Initiative. But don't tell Joe Biden. But it wasn't just Biden broadcasting this. The Arab countries saying this is what we want. The Israelis, Benjamin Netanyahu went to the United Nations General Assembly debate. Instead of holding up a cartoon diagram of an Iranian bomb saying Iran's about ready to blow up the world, he held up a map that said this is how Israel's going to live. And they came this close to doing it. The United States was putting pressure on Saudi Arabia. The Saudi Arabians were this close to normalizing relations. Indonesia, this close. The whole world was ready to cave in, where there would never be a discussion about a Palestinian state again, ever. Israel would now become part of this grand economic interconnectivity that was designed to contain Iran, built around Sunni Arab states like Saudi Arabia would have been the cornerstone of this. But then a couple things started happening. One, darn you Chinese and your diplomacy. Instead of letting America put the Sunni up against the Shia in a permanent conflict-based scenario in the Middle East that would make American defense contractors very happy and emphasize the value that Israel brings to the partnership through its intelligence and military supremacy, you went and negotiated peace between the Saudis and the Iranians. Shame on you. Why don't you share our vision of the world? Why don't you want conflict-based interconnectivity? I don't understand the Chinese mentality. You want peace. That's very naive of you. But you went in there and you negotiated this wonderful deal between the Saudis and the Iranians. And then on top of that, you got them both to get accepted into BRICS. So not only did they make peace, but now they're part of a larger forum where they're talking about working together in common cause towards greater economic co-prosperity. You guys, but still, you didn't defeat the Israeli plan, because they were on the cusp of shutting down Palestine, talk about Palestine, and inserting themselves as the not just exceptional, but they were a mandatory element of this broader strategy that without Israel, it couldn't happen. October 7th changed all this. October 7th, Hamas shredded everything, and they now created a situation where, Palestinian state is on the front burner of everybody. Everybody's talking about Palestinian state. Israel's on the defensive. Instead of being the integral element of this grand co-prosperity, the whole world has turned on Israel, diplomatically isolated Israel. They've been exposed for what they are. But the reason why I brought it up is on October 6th, Israel was winning. You can say whatever you want about Benjamin Netanyahu. Don't call him insane, because he was winning. He was on the verge of victory. This is why October 7th is so important, because October 7th was literally a global game changer, changed everything. But now we have Israel now reacting. They were so close to victory. Imagine that. You were almost there. You could just reach out and touch it. It's like me trying to climb Mount Everest, and I'm there, baby, 50 meters to go, and I run out of oxygen. My rope gets cut. The storm comes in, and I can't make it. That's what happened to Israel. October 7th was all the bad things that prevented them from summiting. And now they have to get down the mountain or die, but they want to make it to the top, and they're in trouble. So this is what Israel's dealing with. And we throw into that the fact that, remember, it's not just a national policy. This is a national policy driven by one man, Benjamin Netanyahu. This has become, Israel today is been shaped in the form and the person of Benjamin Netanyahu. So this is very personalized for him. His political activity today is linked to his personal survival. He's a man who's been charged with immense crimes of corruption, he and his wife, and they're guilty as hell. I know you're innocent until proven guilty, but he's guilty as hell. This is why when he came in, one of the first things he did as prime minister in this iteration was trying to shut down the Israeli courts to take him over. He rewrote basic law and was going to have the Knesset come in and appoint judges and fire judges, impeach judges, so that nobody could ever hear a case against Benjamin Netanyahu. That failed. And recall, before October 7th, there were hundreds of thousands of Israelis in the streets protesting against Benjamin Netanyahu. A lot of these pilots today who are dropping bombs on Gaza and said, we will never fly in the IDF so long as this basic law change is going on, because it fundamentally redefines us and all that stuff. Well, the Supreme Court overturned it. Netanyahu now knows that the moment he leaves office, unless he gets a pardon, he's going to court, he's going on trial, he's going to be found guilty, he's going to jail. So he can't just step aside and do the right thing. Most politicians at some point in time, Tricky Dick Nixon, one of the more corrupt individuals in American political history, he was confronted by the fact that the game was up, that it was over, time to go away, Tricky Dicky, but we're going to pardon you. You can wave your two fingers on the helicopter, but you're done, finished politically. Netanyahu's not going to do that. He can't do that. And so he now has linked his personal survival to his political survival, but his political survival is in trouble because of October 7th. October 7th, he presided over the worst national security failure in Israeli history until April 14th, which has become the worst national security crisis, because October 7th wasn't existential. It was just an embarrassment. I mean, Hamas didn't threaten to destroy Israel. Israel's threatening to destroy itself by its response to Hamas, but Hamas didn't threaten to destroy Israel. Hamas basically lured Israel into a trap of Hamas's design, and Israel then behaved as Israel is wont to behave. And now you have genocide. The world's recognized the genocide. You have an economy that's unsustainable. The Houthi have done a fantastic job of shutting down the Bab el-Mandeb straight, billions of dollars of economic damage. And so now Netanyahu is saying, the only way I can stay in power is to, because everybody recognizes that I've lost the war against Hamas. I've lost. I can't get the hostages back without a ceasefire, but once there's a ceasefire, the war is over, then I'm done. So I need to expand this conflict into Lebanon and against Hezbollah or against Iran. He needs this for his political survival. And this is where it gets very dangerous, because normal, rational people who think logically can game things out and say, well, it's not in Israel's best interest to do X, Y, and Z. But we're not talking about Israel's best interests. Israel's best interests have been subordinated to the personal political ambition of Benjamin Netanyahu, who's fighting for his political life. And right now, I believe he's come up with the recognition that unless he finds a way to deal with Iran's newly imposed deterrence supremacy, that he's politically finished. And then politically finished means he's done. He's 76 years old. I mean, he's in bad health. He's not going to live long anyways, but no man wants to, go gently into the night, to quote Dylan Thomas. He's going to rage against the dying of the light. And that's okay if you're just Netanyahu raging alone in a bedroom by yourself, die. But if you're going to take down the world with you, if you're going to literally become the living embodiment of the Samson option, and this is the scary part, because the Samson option isn't just a biblical reference to Samson taking down the temple. It's Israel's nuclear doctrine, that if the world turns against us, we take the world down with our nuclear weapons. Netanyahu has created an Israel that exists in his image. This is his Israel. The Likud party has been perverted into this religious right-wing insanity that speaks in existential terms, that if we don't save Israel, then there's nothing worth saving. We take it all down. And now we're taken into the next level of insanity, the potential of Israel to use nuclear weapons. And normally I would be dismissive of, but again, we're beyond normal parameters of discussion. We're talking about Benjamin Netanyahu and the insanity of a right-wing political system that embraces Amalek. Amalek is a biblical reference to the genocide of the Amalekites. I'm sure I've just butchered that name, Amalekites. Initially with Saul receiving instructions from Samuel, who claims he received instructions from God, but incomplete genocide later on completed by Esther, the Jewish princess or queen of Babylon, who basically authorized the slaughter of all surviving Amalekites, and the seed of Amalek wiped them out, 75,000. It's celebrated in the Bible every year. The Jewish faithful celebrate it in Purim, a big holiday that says it's good to annihilate the seed of Amalek. Now, biblical things and all that stuff, let's put it away for a second, except that it's turned into policy. When the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, speaks about, we know about Amalek, we know our history, we know what to do, and the Israeli soldiers chant, we will annihilate the seed of Amalek, we will wipe them out, we will commit genocide, and then they carry out actions in Gaza, which have been defined by the International Court of Justice as, supporting a case of genocide. I mean, this is a criminal enterprise. This is a morally corrupt entity that doesn't think rationally, and it's built around the person of one man whose survival depends upon war. So if the man's talking about committing genocide, that means that he probably would be more than happy to say, well, then if we're not able to annihilate the seed of Amalek, then we'll annihilate the entire world. The Samson option will kick in. God will purify the world, and whatever comes forward will be good and just in the eyes of God and the Lord. I don't want to get too religious here, but I mean, this is the mindset of Benjamin Netanyahu, and it's very frightening because it's the mindset of a fanatic, not of a rational player.
I understand Netanyahu and his motivations want to keeping the conflict going, but why did the defense establishment of Israel decide to go along with Netanyahu's plan? I mean, not everybody in the Israeli defense establishment see eye to eye with Netanyahu politically, but yet some of them are even more bloodthirsty than Netanyahu in wanting to expand the conflict. Why is that? I'm more baffling about that.
It's really not that baffling. When you think about it, who oversees the promotions of the military at the senior levels? Civilian leadership. So Benjamin Netanyahu has been a consistent part of Israel's senior-most political establishment, either as prime minister, defense minister, foreign minister, etc. He's been there. And so over time, he has shaped not just the senior leadership, but once you shape a senior leadership and it's sustained over time, the mid-level management says, in order for it to get promoted, I have to endorse certain policies. And so once the mid-level management then shapes the doctrine, shapes the mindset, shapes the philosophy of the IDF, those who come in are shaped by it as well. It pushes its way down. Then you add on to that things such as there's a program in Israel. It's a conscript-driven army. As Israel became more fundamentalist, Orthodox Jewish, you ran into a situation where many Orthodox Jews say we don't have to serve in the military. We get the exception, the exemption. But if you do that, and if everybody just declares themselves to be Orthodox, nobody goes in the military. It's a conscript-driven military. So the Israelis came up with this solution where you have yeshivas that do Talmudic studies. And so all these Orthodox Jewish men are saying, well, I want to become a Talmudic scholar. I want to, imbue myself in that. But the Israelis said, well, you can't avoid military service. So they create reserve units drawn from men who do a 5-year period of a commitment for 5 years in the IDF, but they're Talmudic scholars. So their primary mission is to be Talmudic scholars, but their secondary mission is to drill and become reservists. These are the guys that are fighting in Gaza. These are the guys holding their hands, jumping up and down, saying the seed of Amalek. These are religious fanatics who view they take orders from Israeli rabbis, radical right-wing rabbis that call the Palestinians Amalek, give them justification for annihilating them, create a mindset where it's okay for a sniper to shoot a mother holding the hand of a child crossing the street with a white flag flying. They shoot them. The mindset allows snipers to produce T-shirts that show a pregnant Arab woman and says 1 shot, 2 kills. A mindset that allows the Israelis to shoot up a vehicle, leave a 6-year-old girl alive, allow her to make a phone call to lure in 2 paramedics before killing them all. This mindset is the mindset of the Israeli Defense Force, because the Israeli Defense Force over the course of several decades has become corrupted by this right-wing fanatic ideology driven by Benjamin Netanyahu and these right-wing parties. The Israeli Defense Force isn't the most moral army in the world. That's what the Israelis like to sell it as. It's the most immoral army in the world because they have taken this attitude of we are the supermen, we are God's chosen, the rest of everybody are human animals. When you have an Israeli Minister of Defense and Chief of Staff and all the officers underneath referring to the Palestinians as human animals, you have a problem. Because if the generals view them as animals, then that is pushed down to the soldiers who view them as animals, and then they treat them as animals, and there's no punishment, because there's no punishment for shooting a stray dog. It's not a violation of the laws of war to shoot a stray dog or a rabid beast, and that's how they view the Palestinians. And there's no moral repercussions for the vast majority of these people because they're so thoroughly corrupted by their ideology that they don't reflect on what they have done. I'm not saying America's perfect. We're not. And I'm not saying American troops never committed crimes. We have. But I will tell you this. The vast majority of Americans who committed those crimes today are suffering. They're suffering morally. They're suffering because they reflect on what they've done and they recognize that what they've done is wrong. What they've done is evil. What they've done doesn't reflect what America should stand for. It doesn't justify what they did, but at least they have enough conscience to feel guilty about what they've done. There's no guilt in Israel today for anything that they've done against the Palestinian people.
Let's switch gears over to the Russian-Ukraine conflict, if we could, gentlemen. Scott and Carl, any of you can jump in on this. I mean, is Zelensky going to get his $60 billion, and is that going to be enough to pay the pensioners, rebuild probably the outskirts of Kiev, and fire back, or is it game over as we know it?
Carl, I've been nonstop, so why don't you pick this one up, and then I'll take that you.
Okay, you can drink some water, Scott. The Ukrainian military are being demechanized right now. I mean, there's not enough 155 millimeter shells to go around because Israel needs them. Israel is complaining about not getting enough 155 millimeter shells so they can commit genocide in Gaza. They're not getting enough supply from the United States. The entire industrial military complex of NATO, of not just US, but also European countries, can't even come up with enough the equipment for Ukraine. start of this conflict, we're talking about Ukraine is going to be a quagmire for Russia. Russia's capability is going to be grind down in Ukraine. But what we're seeing is the opposite. Russia has methodically been grinding down Ukrainian military forces, and along with it, all the NATO trained, NATO supply units, but also the ammunitions and weapons being supplied, all the weapon system being supplied by NATO. So for me, like, Russia is not in a hurry to, like in the Europe and in the West, we keep on hearing like scaremongering talks about, oh, if we don't fight Russia in Ukraine, we're going to have to fight Russia in Paris. That's ridiculous. Russia has no interest to push beyond Ukraine. But Russia is also at a point where, Russia economy is chugging along. There's very low unemployment rate. They're having a war economy. The deindustrialization that started with the collapse of the Soviet Union, we're seeing a reversal of that. Now the Russian factories are humming along. They're actually outproducing the entire NATO alliance right now. So I don't see what hope Ukraine has at this point. For Zelensky, he probably just want to continue his grift. But for Ukraine as an independent state, the future looks pretty bleak. I mean, that's my take. I'd like to hear your take on this, Scott, because you have spent way more time covering this and observing this.
Well, I mean, first of all, I agree with your conclusions that Ukraine is not doing well, and that Russia is, Russia. First of all, Russia is not taking its time, but Russia isn't going to do is be precipitous in its actions. There's an element of escalation management taking place here. Ukraine wants NATO intervention. They're begging for NATO intervention, and indeed, you see, because of the desperation of the Ukrainian situation, some NATO members, France in particular, are talking about sending NATO troops in a non-NATO capacity to help out the Ukrainians. What the Russians don't want to do is do something that, let's put it this way. If Russia wins too quickly, and what I mean by that is if Russia is pushing Ukraine while Ukraine's still viable, then NATO may think that they can come in and do some sort of CPR on Ukraine and keep it alive. So what Russia is doing is creating a situation where they're going to let the Ukrainians die a gradual, natural death, so that no one can say, "Oh, well, Russia murdered them." It's going to be, "Oh, Ukraine just didn't answer the phone today. They died in their bed asleep." Now, it's a product of the violence of the war, but what's happened is this conflict has become normalized in the minds of many. I mean, think about it for a second. The level of violence that's taking place on the battlefield in Ukraine between Ukrainians and the Russians is beyond the imagination. That's not me saying. That's Christopher Cavoli, the commander of U.S. ground forces in Europe. It's stunning. Any other conflict that did this, there'd be headline news. I mean, if you had a conflict right now, if you had a situation where a nation suffered 1,000 dead in a day for 5 days straight, the New York Times saying, "My God, look at the fighting. This is horrible. We have to stop this conflict." Well, Ukrainians are losing 1,000 guys a day, and they've been doing that for, coming on 2 years now. And it's just become normalized. The violence has become normal. We're used to seeing dead bodies, destroyed tanks, destroyed artillery, videotapes showing death. It's become normalized. So we are no longer surprised when we see a video of dead Ukrainians or dead Russians. We're just like, oh, that's the Ukrainian-Russian conflict. We got that. So what the Russians are going to be doing is just allowing this violence to continue in a way that's overwhelmingly in their favor. I mean, you can read the reports from British intelligence about the Russians losing 750 guys a day. No, the Russians today are losing the lowest number of troops they have since any time in this conflict. If you take a look at the casualty distortions, we're talking 20, 30, sometimes 40 to 1 casualty ratio. Unsustainable for the Ukrainians, very sustainable for the Russians. The Russians also have to manage victory with their resources. You have to be careful about overrunning your capacity. Russia learned this the hard way when they pushed Ukraine early on. Russia went in with 180,000 troops, took over a lot of territory. The Ukrainians resisted a little bit stronger than they wanted, but Russia was in the process of trying to intimidate Ukraine into accepting a peace settlement, which we now know as the Istanbul Communique, and they almost worked. The Ukrainian negotiators signed off on it. It was only through the intervention of the West, Boris Johnson's ill-fated trip to Kiev, pressure by the United States, that Ukraine turned down the Istanbul Communique. But when Ukraine received $45 billion worth of new Lend-Lease aid from the United States and from Europe to rebuild their army, the Russian forces were too thin. And so when the Ukrainians counterattacked, that's how Russia ended up losing Kharkov and losing the right bank of Kherson because they had insufficient resources to the task. Russia's not going to make that mistake again. They not only mobilized 300,000 reservists, but they have recruited over 600,000 volunteers since that time. That's nearly 1 million men to staff up a military today whose composition is somewhere between 500,000 and 700,000 in the area, and that can be reinforced as we speak. The Ukrainian military, meanwhile, is just shrinking. They're losing thousands of people since January 1st. They've lost, I think, 80,000 people. The counteroffensive last summer, the failed counteroffensive, they lost 160,000 people. That's 240,000, 250,000 people gone, finished, on top of what they've already lost. So the Ukrainian losses right now are in the order of around 800,000 dead. And that number is going to go up. They don't have people to replace them. So you see this collapse. So the Russians are going to manage this collapse. They'll be husbanding their resources, making sure that they don't act in such a manner that provokes a NATO intervention, also making sure that they don't burst the bubble in a way that they can't manage it with the forces available. You see the Russians talking about the creation of two new combined arms armies. They're talking about a Northern Army group. They're talking about a Dnieper River flotilla. Why would you have a Dnieper River flotilla unless you control the Dnieper River, which they don't yet, but they will because they're planning for it. And so I think you're seeing Russia with a very concerted effort. To what end, though? Russia has said from the very beginning that this is about denazification. That's the elimination of what they consider this cancerous ideology of Stepan Bandera, ultra-Ukrainian nationalisms that led to not only the 2014 Maidan coup, but has been a driver in the cultural and ethnic genocidal mindset of the Ukrainian government. That has to be eliminated. And the demilitarization. NATO is, by any definition, a literal proxy. Ukraine is a literal proxy of NATO. So demilitarization means literally the elimination of the Israeli or the Ukrainian military. The Russians have not been talking about how they're going to do that and what's it going to look like. Because remember, Russia has been hoping for a way to breathe life into the Istanbul Communique to keep it viable. But I think right now Russia says that that's not viable anymore. This notion of a Swiss-based peace conference is sort of ludicrous, because how can you have a peace conference if Russia's not invited to it? And if you listen to the words of the Russian ambassador to the United Nations recently, he said that the world's going to have to get used to the fact that the only solution here is going to be the unconditional surrender of Ukraine. Now, the unconditional surrender of Ukraine can go one of two ways. It can go to the physical destruction of Ukraine, meaning that Russia will take over Odessa, Russia will take over Kharkov, Dnipropetrovsk, Mykolaiv, and absorb them into Russia as an extension of the Novorossiya territories they already have, Kherson, Zaporizhia, Donetsk, and Lugansk. And then treat the rest of Ukraine as this rump state that will never have economic and political viability. That's one way of doing it. But there's a Ukrainian government in exile today in Moscow that's looking at the future, and I've spoken to some of the politicians involved in that. And what they're speaking of is a different scenario, a scenario where Russia will allow Ukraine to exist, inclusive of Odessa, Kharkov, Dnipropetrovsk, Mykolaiv. But this new Ukraine will be totally denazified. And the government that comes in will only exist as part of a Ukraine that has formed a political and economic union with Belarus and Russia. So it's sort of like a mini Soviet Union, except that Ukraine will be sovereign. But the important part about it is that Ukraine will never be a part of the European Union and never be a part of NATO, that they will be tied in perpetuity to a union with Belarus, Russia. And actually, if you think about it, that's Ukraine's best option, because the defense industry base that they had now can be rebuilt and plugged into the Russians, who will make them economically viable. Their agriculture, instead of being seen as a threat by European farmers, will become part of Russia's agricultural dominance of the global market. And here's the other thing too. Ukraine will be part of a geopolitical system that sees Russia and China working together in concert. When we speak about this conflict, you've had a deputy secretary of state in the United States accuse China of empowering Russia in their conflict. China, as close as Russia and China have been, and I think we can acknowledge it over history that they haven't always been this close. That there were many problems between Russia and China, and there are still many potential problems between Russia and China. I think some Chinese are like, is this really the right thing for us to be doing? And some Russians are saying the same thing. But in this time, in this place, at this moment, it's the only thing that can be done, because the policies of the United States and the collective West that have targeted Russia over Ukraine are the same policies of the United States and the collective West that are targeting China over Taiwan. And the Chinese, while they may have been initially insulted, their Westphalian principles were insulted by Russia going into Ukraine, over the time have recognized that how Ukraine goes is how Taiwan goes. And the best way to prevent a conflict of Taiwan is to guarantee a Russian victory in Ukraine, to guarantee that this hegemonic, aggressive policy of the United States and Europe vis-a-vis Russia never gets to raise its ugly head in Taiwan. And so you're not going to see Chinese divisions marching anytime soon into Ukraine, if ever. They never will. And I don't think you're going to see a tremendous amount of Chinese military equipment going there. China doesn't work that way. What China has done is says, we guarantee your economic viability. That while you're being strangled to death by the West, while your economy is under attack, we have thrown you a reliable lifeline. A lifeline that not only allows you to live, but to thrive. A lifeline that has the Russian economy growing. And I will tell you this, I've met many Russian businessmen who are doing business in China, and they're not unhappy. They're a little nervous because China is very competent economically, almost dominant economically, and there's a lot of reliance upon Chinese goodwill, that China won't take advantage of this. But it's not in China's interest to take advantage of it, because whatever China does to take advantage of Russia might succeed in the short term. But understand this, China, having looked at what happened, understands that if the West turns against China and seeks to shut down supply chains, access to energy, etc., that China could be in a problem. And China is too big to have a big problem. In China, if you have a catastrophic failure of the economy, it means that millions, hundreds of millions of people will suffer. And the Chinese government's not in the business of allowing its citizens to suffer. So the Chinese now look at Russia and they say, we are going to become interconnected to you on energy, that we need your energy. So now Russia has some leverage over China. And they don't, not that they need leverage, but what I'm saying is, it's like mutually assured destruction on the economy, where without Chinese economic assistance, the Russian economy would falter. And without Russia's energy assistance, the Chinese economy would falter. And together, they say, because we're now connected, it's in our mutual interest to both succeed. They're working together. And they have the Shanghai Cooperation Organization is a very effective forum. The BRICS is going to become a very effective forum. Both China and Russia have committed to creating the Eurasian Economic Union, creating this giant landmass that's totally dedicated to economic development that benefits all players involved. And even if you're not a member of the SCO or BRICS, like Iran is, so they're going to benefit. But let's take North Korea. They're not a member, but they're benefiting peripherally because China and Russia now have, I believe, rightfully recognized what the West was trying to do to North Korea. Because remember how the West was seeking to isolate Russia on Ukraine and China on Taiwan. They've been trying to eliminate North Korea all along, strangle them economically, weaken them militarily, make them irrelevant. And so Russia and China both throw North Korea the ultimate lifeline. They said, we don't care about sanctions anymore. We're going to do business with you. We're opening our border. And while North Korea may not be a member of BRICS or the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, they might as well be, because they're going to get the benefit of that economic flow. North Korea is going to be plugged into Russia, plugged into China, and they're going to receive the benefit of that, and they're going to thrive. This is the direction that we're going. China and Russia are working together in concert, and this is the death knell for Ukraine. We see Ukraine right now. In some ways I feel bad for them. I try to maintain an element of humanity here. On the other hand, because they support Banderists, I have no sympathy. But you've got to put yourself in a Ukrainian shoe and just sit there and say, the Russians have crushed our air defense. They're blowing us up at will on the battlefield. These FABs, these Shahed drones, the missiles. There's nothing we can do about it. We keep begging the West for more air defense, but nothing's coming in. Then Israel on one day says, oops, we're being attacked by Iran. And the whole world runs to Israel and creates missile defense for Israel. And the Ukrainians are going, could we get some of that? But here's the ultimate reality. The world rallies to Israel because Israel has bought the allegiance of the world. In the United States, AIPAC brags openly about how they're going to put $100 million on the barrelhead this year to buy Congress, to continue control of Congress. Joe Biden has taken over $11 million of pro-Israeli money over his career. Almost every major American politician today in Congress is bought and paid for by Israel. The American media is controlled by Israel. In Europe, it's the same thing. And so because of this, we run to Israel's assistance because Israel has commanded us to do so, because they own us. Ukraine, though, doesn't own anything. They're owned by the West. See, Ukraine is the tool. They're not an ally. We don't like Ukraine. We're not the friends of Ukraine. We've been lying to Ukraine from day one. They will never be a member of the European Union because they don't qualify. They will never be a member of NATO because they don't qualify. We keep throwing promises out there, luring them in, but we're only using them as a tool for a broader policy of bringing down Russia. Our goal isn't to empower Ukraine. Our goal is to weaken Russia using Ukraine. And like any tool, we will run it down until it's broken and then we'll cast it aside. And right now we're in the process of watching the broken Ukrainian tool be cast aside. And it's pretty difficult for the Ukrainians, having been lied to this whole time, being told how special they are, how much friends they are, to realize that they have never been well liked by the West, that the West doesn't care about them, that the West was willing literally to fight to the last Ukrainian. And now that the last Ukrainian is on the horizon, the West is going to throw them away. And it's in some ways, it's very sad. It's a sad state of affairs to see that happened, and to know that this was a predictable outcome, to know that there was no way Ukraine was ever going to emerge victorious, and that Russia was not going to allow itself to be defeated, and that the best thing that could have happened to Ukraine was for Zelensky to sign off on the Istanbul Communique. Today, Ukraine would be a physically intact nation. Tens of millions of people would not be displaced from their homes. Over $1 trillion of damage, some of it irreparable to their infrastructure, wouldn't have happened. And 800,000 Ukrainian soldiers would be alive today. Fathers, brothers, uncles, sons would be home with their families, contributing to the economic and political well-being of Ukraine. That's not going to happen now. They're all dead. The nation's destroyed. And it's sad to watch this happen.
I like to see, look at the future prospect. I think I remember watching a Japanese documentary filmmaker who is based in China. He interviewed a Ukrainian woman who settled in China since the war. And he was very surprised to hear the women who is used to live with her mom in Ukraine, but she lives in China with her husband, but the mother decided to travel back, but to Russia. Like the Japanese filmmaker was really surprised to find. So like, why you guys are from Ukraine? Why would your mom to go live in Moscow? And the mother explained it. I grew up in former Soviet Union. I mean, Ukraine, Russia, it's all the same to me. And the reason I chose to work in Moscow is because Russia and China have open borders. For me, it's very easy to visit my daughter. I only have one daughter. She lives in China with her husband, and it's convenient for me to work in Russia so I can visit my daughter anytime. I would not be able to do that if I live in Ukraine. And on top of that, Ukraine doesn't have an economy right now. And this made me think, like really a Russian victory in Ukraine actually means millions of Ukrainians. By the way, like over 2 million Ukrainians, they went to settle in Russia. There are millions of Ukrainians who went to Western Europe, but also millions of Ukrainians who decided to settle in Russia. So I think with a Russian victory in Ukraine, there's a real chance for reconstruction. I mean, look at Chechnya. Chechnya was absolutely destroyed in the Chechen War, but today Chechnya is thriving. Chechnya has been rebuilt, and look at the Mariupol. That got completely destroyed. Today Mariupol has been rebuilt, and that is only made possible because of the Russian victory. So I actually believe the best case, realistically best case for Ukrainians right now living in Ukraine is a Russian victory, a final resolution of the conflict, that there will be a chance for reconstruction, because China is also interested to expand the Belt and Road Initiative to Ukraine, and China has the capital for investment to China. If anything, look at the records of NATO countries, in terms of reconstruction. They occupied Kosovo since 1990s. Kosovo is still the shithole of Europe. I mean, it's still a place plagued by organized crimes, prostitution, drug trade. It's still under NATO occupation. I mean, there's no reconstruction to be speaking of, because this is not the job of NATO to do economic investment and reconstruction. But this is where China and Russia can work together, because China is not comfortable to send its force projection, to send its troops abroad. Unlike Russia, Russia has been providing security. We saw that in Central Asia. We saw that in Syria. But what China did is China bring investment into Central Asia. China brought an economic lifeline to Assad. And China is perfectly willing to have Russia to take to take the front and center stage in providing security in these type of places. And for me, rather than say they have the kind of the bound by mutual mad and mutual assured destruction, is I see the Russian and Chinese economy are complementary. Because Russia is a main commodity producer. China is a large import of energy, and right now, especially with U.S. Navy constantly talking about the blockade on Strait of Malacca, where they're going to blockade the Chinese energy supply coming from Middle East. Russia provide a very safe conduit for steady energy supply into China. That will never be threatened. I mean, what's U.S. Navy gonna do? Fly F-35 deep into the Russian-Chinese territory to bomb the rail lines and the pipelines? And that's ridiculous. And that's World War III right there. And so I think Russia-China tie has never been better, because it's even more stable than during the Sino-Soviet honeymoon period in 1950. The Sino-Soviet honeymoon happened because the ideology. The two sides were talking by ideology, but there was a lot of problem underneath that was briefly smoothed over by ideology, but eventually emerged, and that caused the Sino-Soviet split. But today, the Russian-China relationship is not based on ideology. It's based on mutual interest. I think in that way, an interest-based relationship is much more stable because both sides knows what they're getting out of this.
Right, but to have a mutually beneficial relationship, there has to be trust, and trust has to be based upon an understanding between the two, where they recognize that they're different, but they embrace the differences. What I saw in Russia and traveling there is that there's a lot of ignorance in Russia about China. And from that ignorance comes fear. Russia is very concerned about the Far East and the fact that the lack of population there, all the resources there, and they have this notion that China is somehow going to flood the border and come in and just absorb it. And also, a lot of Russia builds off of the Sinophobia of the West, because there's a big part of Russia that was, up until 2 years ago, very closely integrated with the West. Superficially, I'll give you an example. The taxi cabs of Moscow. When you call a car, car service, it used to be that you would get Mercedes-Benz or BMWs, and that nobody would want to get in any car besides a Mercedes-Benz and a BMW. And even today, there's still people that just want that, but it's becoming very difficult to sustain. Because the other thing about Moscow or the Russians is they're snobs, meaning when they have a car service, when they want a new car coming to pick them up, they want a car that they get into and it's a comfortable ride. Just in between May and in December, I saw just in that period of time the transformation of the service car industry in Moscow from a Mercedes-Benz BMW dominated market to one where Chinese luxury cars were now there, and not just that, but driving around. And one of the things that happened to do this is the Russians have to become comfortable with the Chinese, and they are. There's Chinese tourists in Moscow. Every place I went, there was Chinese tourists. And my understanding is that the Russians are starting to go to China as well. I know Russian businessmen now. And every Russian businessman that I've spoken to who went to China comes back just amazed, just stunned, because they, like everybody else, have certain prejudices built in. They have certain assumptions built in based upon, years of misinformation. But when they go there and they see China, just like when I tell Americans to go to Russia, I'm getting ready to do a tour of Russia this summer. The motto of the tour is, from the Pacific Ocean to the Baltic Sea and everything in between. And it's basically to address the prejudice and the ignorance of the following statement. Yeah, Moscow may be a good city. St. Petersburg may be a good city, but everything outside of that is crap. Russia's run down. It doesn't work. It's broken. I've been to cities outside of Moscow, and that's not true. But now the purpose is to go over there and show from the Pacific Ocean to the Baltic Sea and everything in between is the real Russia, and let people decide for themselves. The Chinese are out there. The Chinese aren't just going to Moscow. They're in Novosibirsk. They're in Ekaterinburg. They're everywhere. And they're going there. They're seeing Russia. And they're coming back and they're talking about Russians in a positive way. Russians are going to China. And you're starting to break down this wall of ignorance and the fear that's generated from that. And from that, now when we speak of economic co-prosperity, there's going to be a trust because they understand how China works. They understand who the Chinese are. The Chinese understand how Russia works, who the Russians are. And they've come together and they say, hey, we're comfortable with this peaceful coexistence thing. And we can turn it into a mutually beneficial relationship. And they will, and they are. And I just keep telling the Americans, man, we got to do the same thing. The best way to prevent a conflict with either Russia or China are to travel to Russia and China and meet the Russians and Chinese people, and to recognize that they are just humans like us. They might their skin color might be different in the case of China. I don't know. That was a very racist thing to say. But their language would be different. Their cultural things would be different. They might dress differently. But at the end of the day, we're the same people. You sit around a table and you tell jokes, and we're going to laugh. Humor is humor. The things that make Chinese sad make Americans sad. The things that make Chinese happy make Americans happy. And once we realize that, and we realize that we're the same people, that there's no reason to have this fear and this animosity, suddenly we're not spending $1 trillion on defense anymore, and we're figuring how to work with it. Because see, we fear you. We fear you because you're so damn good at your economic stuff. Janet Yellen just came out and she admitted you guys do it better than we do. And she's mad at you because you're doing it better than we are. She's mad at you because you outcompete us. Well, again, I mean, Chinese are good businessmen. Of course they are. I mean, they wouldn't have gotten where they are today if they weren't. But part of a good businessman isn't to run down, your potential customers or even your competitors. It's to find a healthy economic relationship. And that if the United States be willing to work with China, China be more than happy to say, what can we do so that we both prosper together? Because you see, if I'm going to be a Chinese consumer, I have to have money. And I have to also have my own industrial base. And China doesn't want to be a place that's only something you have to also consume. There has to be healthy interaction. There has to be a balance. And good businessmen understand the balance. China and Russia today are working on getting that balance. China can have that balance with America. America can have that balance with Russia. There's a whole big world out there today that we can find economic, co-prosperity balance. But in order to do that, I got to sit down with you and talk to you. And you got to feel comfortable with me. You got to trust me. I got to trust you. Right now, there's no trust. China and Russia are working through centuries of mistrust, and they are solving this problem. And I think that anybody in the West that continues to believe that we can drive a wedge between China and Russia, I think they're just dead wrong. I don't think that China and Russia are going to have a wedge driven between them anytime soon.
A lot of people in the West, they don't even realize the Sino-Soviet split ended in 1989. I mean, they still think they can bring it back like that. And I think, what you said about people to people exchange, I mean, 100%. I think this is the reason Chinese government is actually rolling out a lot of the policies recently to roll out unilateral visa-free policies for many EU countries. And as well as the Southeast Asian countries like Malaysia and Singapore. I'm hoping they do it for United States, or at least for Indonesia, so my wife can go. But U.S. is the one that U.S. State Department now lists China under travel level 3 travel advisory. So right now China is on the same level as the countries in the Civil War, like Ethiopia, right? It's dangerous for American to travel to, which is completely bogus. You have tons of.
I agree with you, Carl. I'm sitting here right now in Guangzhou, and I'm going to tell you guys something that is absolutely amazing. I walked into the Guangzhou Canton Fair. It's basically makes the Consumer Electronics Show look like a small little lounge in an airport. There is over 72,000 booths here. And you want to know what was the number one language after Chinese here, Carl? What do you think? What do you think it was at this show today as buyers?
Well, I mean, it's not English. Don't tell me it's Russian.
Russian.
I would think, no
Russian.
Way. Wow.
Everywhere you go, my wife, she speaks Russian as well. She turned to me and she says, "This is unbelievable what is happening here." And I tell you, I mean, you see it. The buyers are here. I mean, Scott has experienced it. I think you have experienced it, Carl. Even Alex Christoforou from the Duran said, he went there and he says, wow. I mean, the automobiles have been replaced by Chinese product. And hey, when you sanction someone 16,500 times, what do you think's going to happen? Bank of China is opening up many branches throughout Russia right now. I mean, exciting times ahead. 280 billion plus in trade. Fantastic. I'll hand it back to you, gentlemen.
Yeah, I'm just happy they finally allowed WeChat and Alipay to be hooked up with foreign credit cards, so I don't have to rely on my auntie's Chinese bank to use mobile payment in China. But the people to exchange. I'm thinking about my recent trip to Russia last summer. Even me, I consider I thought I was immune to all the Western propaganda. I know there are tons of Western propaganda against Russia, but I was genuinely surprised when I landed in Moscow, and when I landed I consider Moscow one of the most beautiful cities in the world. I mean, of all the places I traveled to, I traveled extensively inside the United States. I went to a couple places in Europe, Asia, China, but Moscow is absolutely one of the top beautiful. I mean, McCain likes to say, Russia is just a giant gas station with nuclear weapons. Then it must be the most gorgeous, beautiful gas station ever seen, because Moscow is beautiful. But I was surprised because just the fact that I saw Moscow in like brilliant colors. Then I realized all the image I used to see in traditional mainstream media like Wall Street Journal, New York Times, CNN about image from Russia is always gray. They must apply some kind of gray filter because it's always gray and depressing. So I was actually surprised. I was just as surprised as Tucker Carlson when he traveled to Russia to see, Moscow is clean, it's beautiful, it's nice. People. The shops are full. People are just trying to lead normal lives, and I just read a recent news. United States and China are trying to renegotiate on reopening the air routes, trying to bring them back to like pre-COVID levels, but this move has been rejected by the U.S. airline because they claim that China has a
how we doing for time there, Scott? Are you needed on another program, or?
We can go. If we can wrap up in the next 10 minutes or so, that would be good. I got to eat.
Okay, I yield my time to Scott because I can go forever. Okay. I like to yield my time to Scott.
I just think what you're saying.
I yield my time to Scott Ritter.
No, I think what Carl's saying is just so important. That there's so much ignorance out there about China and such. I've talked with this about Alex before, and I'm not a Chinese expert. I'm not. I know Chinese history. I'm familiar enough, but with Russia, I can honestly call myself a Russian expert. I've put the 10,000 hours that's needed to turn me from superficial knowledge into an expert into this problem. But maybe not being a Chinese expert's the best thing in the world, because I just feel like that I'd love to go to China and do in China what I did in Russia, just to go and meet people and talk to people and see it and capture that experience and bring it back to the United States to encourage more, and maybe I'm the guy to do it because I don't care about the level 3 travel advisory. I mean, I'm not, that doesn't intimidate me. It doesn't scare me at all, because I recognize it for what it is, garbage. And it would just, for me to see China, because China, I would imagine, is a lot like Russia. A lot of people look at Moscow and say that defines Russia, or they look at Moscow and St. Petersburg and they say those two cities define, but it doesn't. Russia's so damn big and so diverse, and it's full of so many different ethnicities and religions and cultures, and they all come together in this wonderful thing called the Russian Federation. I just imagine that China is the same. That you get outside of Beijing or you get outside of Shanghai, and you start moving through China, you see a country that has geographic diversity. I've just seen photographs of Chinese mountains and Chinese valleys and Chinese rivers that are you're just like, wait a minute, this is a painting or is this real? You get out into Western China, where you see the interface with Islamic communities. and you know the deep cultural traditions of Islam in China and how they get along with one another. You know, there's a lot of stuff being said about the Uyghurs, and there's a lot of stuff being said about other things. I'd like to see it for myself, because you know what, I'm not a dunce. I'm not a dupe. I'm pretty good at walking into a place going, is this real or is it Memorex? I mean, you know, are the Chinese pulling one over my eyes, or is this real? I saw that in Tehran. I was a little concerned when I went to Iran for the first time, the only time. I hope to be able to do it again. I got out of the Tehran airport, and I just thought I'd be walking into a police state. Instead, I walked into normalcy. There's a taxi driver. He wasn't government driven. I just waved him down. He came. He took me to everybody wanted to talk to me. Everywhere I went in Iran, I got out of Tehran and I'm going down a 4-lane super highway going, where the hell am I? Because this is better than the New York State Thruway connecting Albany with New York City. I got off at an Iranian rest stop thinking that it was going to be third world, flies, stinky toilets. It's clean. The toilets are modern. The food is delicious. The gas pumps out on time. Everything's wonderful. And you go into the different cities and villages, nice people. They want to talk to you. And I just imagine that if I went to China, I'd run into the same thing. Nice people who want to talk to you, who are living normal lives. I mean, can we find bad things? You know, if I wanted to, I could do a couple things here. I could walk through my community and take photographs and show you nothing but good stuff. Or I could walk through my community, same community, and take photographs, and you'd say, this is the dump of the world right here in where I live. I can find things and I can photograph things that would make all of this look really bad. Are there bad things in America? You're damn right there are, and I want us to fix them. Are there bad things in China? I would say yes, there are. But I confronted somebody very close to me the other day about Russia, and because they were talking about this trip I'm planning to make, and they said, well, are you going to show balance? And I said, what do you mean by balance? Well, I mean, are you going to show the bad with the good? I said, but what do you mean by that? Because here, I'll give you an example. I was in Sevastopol and walking around Sevastopol, beautiful city, and for 3 days, just saw, you know, a city. I mean, I could find a chip in the wall and take a photograph, say the crumbling infrastructure. Well, it ain't crumbling. I mean, there, you know, it's a city that's been around for a long time. There's going to be places that they need to be repaired. That's okay. But the people are happy. Everything's clean. But we came out and there was a drunk on a bench. A drunk on a bench. He was clearly drunk. He was clearly sleeping it off. Now, I could have taken a picture of that and posted it and said, drunk on a bench in Sevastopol. This is the Russian reality. But was it? Would that be balanced to show that photograph? Or would that be sort of unfair to say, here's a photograph that I'm putting up. All the photographs I could take of Sevastopol, this is the one that I choose to define Sevastopol by. That's just not right. That's wrong. Now, if there was a whole bunch of drunks out there, if they had a Skid Row, maybe you could say Russia's got a drinking problem. And here it is, a click, a photograph, a drinking problem, because it's a real problem that manifests itself in a way that defines what I'm looking at. But one drunk on a bench doesn't define the problems that beset Sevastopol or Russia. So you just have to be responsible in how you go forward and sell things. I'm not saying to become a cheerleader. The last thing I'd want to do for any audience that might want to track me through China is to become a Chinese cheerleader. Hey, look at China. Everything's great. Everything's wonderful. Rah, rah, rah. That's not it. I want to come in and I want to meet Chinese people. I want to, if I meet you and you take me to a restaurant that isn't a 5-star restaurant, it's a 2.5-star restaurant where truckers come in. Hey, guess what? China's got truckers. And they're real people like our truckers. And they come in with mud on their boots. They come in smelling of 3 days because they haven't taken a shower in 3 days because they're trucking. And they come in there and they don't have all the money in the world and they just want a good, decent meal. They sit down at a table and a waitress comes out who doesn't look like a supermodel. She's a real person. And she sits down and she puts food in front of you that's delicious, but it's not on fine china. Is this a bad thing? Nope. It's China. It's real. It's as real as it gets, and it should be shown to people and embraced and seen for what it is. That's what needs to happen. We need to show people not the facade, but the reality. And the reality, I believe, is pretty damn good. In America, the thing that bothers me is that traveling around America anymore, I used to tell people that, you come to America and you're going to see the good, and the good will dominate everything else. You'll see ugly things. We have problems in America. We got racism, we got poverty, we got a whole bunch of problems. We got crumbling infrastructure. But that you could come to America and without any guide, walking away, because people tend to gravitate to the norm, the mean. And if you gravitate to the norm, the mean of America, that middle average, it's good. And you're going, this is good. I know there's bad stuff over here, and I know there's a lifestyle of the rich and famous up here, but the stuff in the middle is pretty good. It defines America. We're running into a problem in America today where it's hard to find that mean anymore, that bad is coming in, society is changing, and it's difficult to find that mean. In Russia, when I find that mean, it's good. It's good. I like it. I would imagine if I went to China, I would hope to find the same sort of, average out that says this is good. And the reason why I think it's important to show that to America isn't to say China's better than America, but to tell Americans that a lot of our problems comes from the fact that we are ignorant, that we are shutting ourselves down in the world, that we're not taking advantage of opportunities that could enable our life to get better. We spend so much time trying to shut down TikTok and ban Huawei phones and not realizing that, TikTok's not a threat. Huawei's not a bad phone. And if we stopped wasting time and energy, that maybe we could get better. We could make that mean a better mean. Look, if we're threatened by Huawei phone, build a better phone. I mean, look, if I don't want a Huawei phone, find me a better phone. That's called competition, baby. Apple, Huawei, you think that's a good product? Give me a better product at a price I can afford. That's called economic competition. And then Huawei is going to go, whoa, damn, Apple just beat us. We got to get a better phone, but we can't make it too expensive. The next thing you know, you have this competition taking place, and who benefits? We do. We get good products at better prices. But that can't happen if you've walled yourself in and become ignorant. And I think the American people today have walled themselves in and become ignorant. And it's absolutely imperative that we get out there, see the rest of the world. The more we see, the more empowered we come with knowledge, and the less we have to fear, because fear is derived from ignorance. Break down the walls of ignorance, stop being afraid, learn together, live together in peace and prosperity. And who knows, you may make some pretty cool friends. I've made some Russian friends right now that I'm as close to as I am with any of my American friends. And I would hope that someday I could make some Chinese friends that are on that same level.
I would welcome you to China. I mean, I highly encourage anybody who is watching, who is listening, to come to China. I mean, like I believe you guys will love it. I know Alex can show you around, Scott. He's got all the connections. But yeah, I mean, one of the problem right now is the air travel is actually expensive between China and United States, because all the airlines have canceled their routes since the COVID time. And when they're trying to bring it back to the pre-COVID level, all the American airlines are objecting because China this claim the Chinese airline have this unfair anti-competitive advantage because they can fly over Russian airspace and through the North Pole. I mean, this is completely self-inflicted. The simple thing is get rid of the sanction on Russia, then the American airline can also fly over the North Pole through Russia to China. I hope that day comes soon. I can't wait for that day to come.
So if I come to China, I'm going to have to fly through Novosibirsk.
I mean, I would, what you can get a 10-year multiple entry visa to China, because U.S. and China has this agreement. So you can get the 10-year multi-entry visa, and I'm assuming you already have Russian visa, so maybe you can.
I don't have a Russian visa. I have to go beg for a Russian visa every time I visit. We're in the process right now of making sure the Russians still want me to come in their country. So. Look,
get the 3-year. You can get the 3-year multiple entry visa to Russia.
I just want to go to China once first.
And yeah. Like it's easy.
Make sure I get to come home, and then
China has this the 1 week transit visa for for major city like Shanghai, Beijing, If you can show that you have a return ticket getting out of China at the end of the week, you can go without visa. This is
I want the month and a half good time visa.
Absolutely, and that's
exactly
what you're gonna get, definitely. And I'll be there at the airport waiting for you. Scott, we're gonna let you close down your section, and then we'll keep Carl on for a bit. But fantastic live stream tonight, gentlemen. Man, Carl's been saying to me, when are you gonna get me on with Scott Ritter? And what a banger it was tonight. Okay, Scott, I'll give you the next couple of minutes to say your goodbyes and everything, and then Carl and I will wrap up the show, but we'll hand it over to you, sir.
Well, again, Alex, thanks for having me on. And Carl, it was an absolute pleasure to meet you and talk with you. And I look forward to having continued conversations of this nature. And I want to thank your audience for tuning in. And I'll see you guys next time around.
Thank you, Scott. I mean, that was awesome. I had a university level. You are on mute, Alex. You're on mute.
Yeah, I know.
I got a university level lecture. You know, I would just like you said. You have never heard me so silent on a podcast. I just enjoyed myself listening to like his description of the Iranian missiles coming from different angles.
It's unbelievable.
That's amazing.
Sometimes I've just got to put it on, autopilot and sit back and backstage here and talk to Scott. I mean, I really appreciate everybody that's been tolerating me today. I'm not in my studio, and I love being in my studio in Chongqing because I come at you with 1080 and 30p per second, or even 60 frames per second, visual. So what we're going to do here is I just want to round up this show here and also say a special thanks to Carl Zaw's audience. Carl, just to note, you have over 2,061 people watching on X right now.
Nice.
Okay.
Nice.
Your X is 4-to-1 ratio on your YouTube channel. We broke over 7,000 this evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's been an absolutely, I call it a barn buster of an evening here. I'm coming at you guys live here in Guangzhou, and trying to hold everything together here. I'm in a very busy city at the moment. It's big time, that's for sure. But a very interesting day when you see, Carl, if you were ever to come to Guangzhou during the Canton Fair. It's a major attraction here in China. A lot of stuff that is going down in this city, everybody. Guangzhou. I know my heart is in Chongqing, but unfortunately, I'm not there tonight, and I'm representing them definitely very well here at the show. But indeed, if you come to Guangzhou around this time of the year, good luck getting a hotel, good luck getting a taxi, but you want to be a buyer at this convention because it is mega. We are talking big time stuff, okay? I think it was 6 football stadiums, the size of this trading floor. I
just remember I was in Guangzhou in June 2019. It was freaking hot, man. I was walking around along the Pearl River at 10:30 at night and sweating bullets. I mean, I'm assuming now it's probably better. It's April, but it's hotter than Bali, Guangzou in July.
So, Carl, thank you for sitting on autopilot with me on the side here, getting schooled by Mr. Ritter on the program. I think it's a pleasure. And always, you and I had just recently, I guess, a live stream. It was about the terror attack that happened in Moscow a few weeks back. Big thanks out to all the moderators on the program. Valley, thank you very much for keeping everybody in order. We need your support. It's very important that you do support our channels. I'm not coming on here saying, we need it. But I'll tell you, within a millisecond of after I end the stream button, YouTube definitely starts demonetizing this video and all our hard work and efforts that we've put into this program. Not that we don't enjoy it, but sometimes we have some things that we have to take care of, and some of them are a little bit expenses to keep these shows going and stuff like that. So any support you guys can give us by Super Chat or buy me a coffee, and all the other donation links are in it below. Okay, I don't need to go on to that much more. Carl, I'm going to say goodbye to you, sir, and I look forward to having a live stream with you soon. Okay. And you cool? You want to say anything to the audience before you leave?
Yeah. I mean, Alex said he doesn't need it. He doesn't need contribution. I do. I need whatever help I can get, to finance my lifestyle in Bali. So yeah, I appreciate all these super stickers and all these.
Yeah.
And
they really do help everybody.
Yeah, and I just appreciate you guys tuning in to watch us, because it's good to know we're not talking to ether, like we're not talking to air. So this tonight, I mean, Alex, I gotta hand it to you. That was amazing to have Scott Ritter on. I could just sit and listen to him. I don't have to say anything. So you kind of forced me to say my piece, but I'd rather just sit here and with a smile on my face. So it was good times.
Fantastic.
We'll do this again. Yeah.
I'm gonna keep you on here. I've just got a couple of stories I just want to share with the audience tonight that I actually think are quite important. Being from a city in Southwest China here, Chongqing. You're a Chongqinger too, right?
I mean,
let's have a look at this news story. This is interesting, and we spoke about this before the show, so let's reserve our comments and talk about it here. But this is interesting news, everybody, and it's quite interesting for Chongqing, because this was the German Chancellor Scholz. He didn't land in Beijing first, Carl. He landed in Chongqing. Now, that says a lot about our beautiful city, mine and yours, and 30 some other million people. This is very interesting, and pay attention to this, everyone, because this will tell you where we are in the city here in Southwest China and what is going on here. Just to give you a quick note here, in the afternoon on the 14th of April, German Chancellor Scholz led a delegation to visit the popular scenic spots in the mountain city, where he warmly waved and greeted the citizens of Chongqing. Along the way later, he also experienced some water monitoring project, along with standing collaborations in Chongqing University. These guys were busy. I mean, they were doing a lot in the town here, Carl. They were visiting German manufacturing plants. I mean, it was quite active. I've got a video here I'm going to show you guys. Let me just cue it up here. And okay, here we go. Let's see if we can get this video rocking and rolling on the screen.
Did you know, Alex, that Chongqing,
yeah, tell me.
Chongqing produces 1/3 of the world's laptops. Did you know that?
I knew that.
Oh, look at you.
And a special, and a special train goes all the way from Chongqing to Dusseldorf, which changes, I hear, anywhere from 30 to 50 conductors. Let's have a look at this shot here. The service of the hydrogen powertrain products and hydro powertrain products. Scholz experienced the assembling and as well as many other plants, hydrogen powertrain module with guidance. You can see he was there. And this is once again very interesting, Carl. I mean, G7 country, a highly level government to come out and be in Chongqing. I mean, what does that say? This is your little city massively growing up, man, overnight. I mean, what do you think about these big names? These are big names coming to a city that most people on this program haven't heard of.
I wouldn't have imagined this when I was going to elementary school in Chongqing in 1980s, right? I mean, like I couldn't have imagined my city would turn out to be a tourist hotspot in China. I mean, it's videos going viral on X, on Twitter, right? I mean, like people are looking at videos Chongqing, like, is this AI? Is this real? Like, no, it is real. But and what's amazing is most what you see, all the high-rise building you see, was built after I left China in 1990.
That's right. I remember we talked about this before, didn't we?
Yeah, the tallest structure in Chongqing when I left was the Liberation Monument in the downtown. It was like a 3-story tall building built after the end of World War II. But now, if you go see there's like all the tall rise buildings grow around it. I mean, if you look down from the top of the tall buildings around the Liberation Monument, you look down, the Liberation Monument looks like so tiny. But that's the change, literally the change that happened in the last 20, 30 years.
Well, what we'll do, Carl, is we'll play that for the outro. I've got one more quick video to bring up here. I might have to mute it if it has music just for copyright, but let's have a look at it. There we go. We're going to mute that, but here it's just basically talking about on the fort, and there's the buildings there. Okay, I thought he was taller than that. Anyway, Schultz, well, I did. I actually thought he was a tall guy. Schultz and the delegation traversed the streets and the alleys of the Yuzhong district. That's where the CBD is. He visited famous landmarks. I mean, this is a serious showing for Germany to show up. Nothing but good praise for the cities, for the city itself, and talking about the relationship. I think this is good for the city, Carl. To see this kind of stuff happen, to see these leaders come into town, and as well as, there's another skyline shot there. Schultz headed to Jianbeiju, where he learned more of the results of the longstanding collaboration between Chongqing University and in the water quality. But once again, to me, to see this kind of stuff happening here in Chongqing, I mean, this is your baby city, my friend. It's not a baby city. It's on the big leagues now.
Yeah, I'm amazed. I'm amazed myself. I went last time I went back was 2019. Before you went back to Chongqing. You know, I found you on YouTube on a video you did about Chongqing. I'm like, who's this Canadian guy doing a video on my hometown? And you did a fantastic job, by the way. But I did not know you're gonna move to Chongqing in the middle of the pandemic and settle in.
I did indeed.
Yeah.
Just want to say once again, it's been an amazing, exciting week here in China. It just started. I'm here in Guangzhou, but wow, there was quite excitement, Carl. When I left the airport there, when he arrived, there was a lot of the city basically rolled out the carpet for all the ambassadors that came from Germany. And they have a lot to be proud of, Carl, and so do you. I mean, being a Chongqinger, I mean, your city is amazing. This city has a bright future ahead of it. I'm here in Guangzhou. Everybody knows about this city down here, especially in the Pearl River Delta area here. I say I'm from Chongqing. The first thing that comes out of their mouth is, wow. That is an amazing, amazing city. And once again, interesting to see that the entire, I wouldn't say the entire parliament of Germany came, but it was great to see that they came to the city. They are building really good ties with Chongqing. And it's a city that really needs to be, what was the right word? I don't want to say praised. I want to say, finally really recognized as a global player here. It's a very important city in Southwest China. It has some amazing, economic systems to it. For example, the Chengdu-Chongqing Economic Circle, there's 100 million people in that. And the International Land-Sea Trade Corridor that just, branches all these logistical lines going all the way down into Southeast Asia. Anyway, that's enough of the business stuff. What Carl and I are going to do now, we're going to give you guys a beautiful outro here of the city of Chongqing. Let's have a look. Yeah, I've got a nice intro and outro here. 3 minutes, 23 seconds. All you guys in the chat, you still have some time to send Carl some super chats. You got 3 minutes and 28 seconds to light up his super chat for him. There's over 6,500 of you guys left. Carl, I will see you backstage, sir. Thank you so much for being part of the program tonight. Take care. All right. We'll chat soon, buddy.
Guys.
All right,
enjoy
cheers,
the view of my hometown, Chongqing.
All right, guys. All right, take care, guys. And I'll add some music. All right, see you in a minute.
Peace.